Welcome to this Style Academy video on phrases and clauses. This is a fundamental set of concepts that we're going to talk about in this video, and the tools that you'll gain after having watched and practiced these concepts will truly set you on the way to writing more effective sentences. We're going to talk about phrases and clauses and their relationships to a sentence. So let's think a little bit here about a sentence. A sentence or sentences are made up of phrases and clauses. These two are fundamental building blocks to a sentence. In turn, phrases and clauses are made up of words. You might have thought that sentences were just made up of words, but they're actually this sort of intermediate layer, and that's what we want to spend our time talking about today. What does this look like in real life? Take a look at this sentence here. This is a sentence we'll spend the rest of the video working with. The slightly deranged villain watched her surreptitiously from the shadowy corner of the room while the thunder boomed outside. Now, you can see words in this sentence. We've got words like slightly and shadowy that add some description. We've got nouns like thunder or verbs like watched. Some of those words are grouped into phrases. For instance, we've got this phrase, the slightly deranged villain, that describes one of the main actors of our sentence. Or we've got a phrase like from the shadowy corner, telling us where he watched her. These phrases in this sentence, we also then have two clauses. The slightly deranged villain watched her surreptitiously from the shadowy corner of the room, and while the thunder boomed outside. These two clauses, made up of words and phrases, form our main sentence. Now, understanding the difference between a phrase and a clause is one of those things that's going to help a lot in terms of writing powerful sentences. So, what's the difference between a phrase and a clause? Let's start by talking about a phrase. A phrase, the easiest way to define it really, is that it's just a bunch of words. Now, these words are connected to each other. They form a unit of meaning, but they're really just a bunch of words. If we take a look at the sample sentence again, these phrases that we've highlighted in red, for instance, take a look at that second one, from the shadowy corner. There's a bunch of words there. They're connected. They're meaningful together. In this case, they tell us where the villain watched from. But they're just a bunch of words. That's it. That's a phrase. Now, a clause, on the other hand, it's kind of like a phrase in that it's a bunch of words, but it's a bunch of words that feature a noun and a verb that are connected to each other. That noun and that verb go together. And that verb is conjugated often too. What does that look like in our sample sentence? Well, here's one of the clauses. Take a look at this clause carefully, and you will see a noun, in this case, villain. He's one of our main actors. And a verb, in this case, watched. Notice how the villain is the one doing the watching. So the noun and the verb are together, connected in a relationship. That makes this set of words a clause. It's got a noun and a verb. Again, with our sample sentence, here's that second clause. You'll notice again here a noun, thunder, and a verb, boomed. They're connected. They're part of this group of words. That makes this group of words a clause. So, again, a phrase, just a bunch of words. A clause, a bunch of words that contain a noun and a conjugated verb that are connected to each other. So let's return to our model sentence here, and you'll see that we have two clauses, two groups of words with different nouns and verbs that make up this sentence. Now, if you look closely at these two clauses, you might notice something else, and it might be connected to maybe some stuff you did in high school with sentence diagramming or some grammar exercises or something like that. So this may be familiar to you. But these two clauses can further be identified as either independent or dependent based on whether the clause could stand on its own, whether it could satisfy all the requirements to be a complete sentence. You take a look at this clause in red, for instance. If you read that, you say, hey, we could just stick a period at the end of that, and we'd have a complete sentence. Has all the information it needs. The slightly deranged villain watched her surreptitiously from the shadowy corner of the room. Period. The orange clause, on the other hand, couldn't. We couldn't just have this stand all by itself. It's missing something. While the thunder boomed outside. We want to know, well, what happened while the thunder boomed outside? What was going on? So that clause, even though it has a noun and a verb, it cannot stand on its own. So we call it a dependent clause. Clauses that are independent could stand on their own and be considered complete sentences. Clauses that are dependent actually rely on another clause, an independent clause, to make a complete sentence. Just a tip here, if you look at that dependent clause, that clause in orange, you'll see this word while. That's a great clue that we got some extra information that needs to happen or be added to the sentence before we could consider it complete. Some stuff needs to be added to this clause. Thus, it's dependent. So, quick review. A phrase, just a bunch of words. They're connected, they mean something together, but they're just a bunch of words. A clause, a bunch of words that have a noun and a verb as part of them. That noun and verb have to be connected. And we can have independent clauses that stand on their own, could be considered complete sentences, or we have dependent clauses that can't stand on their own. Hopefully you're feeling comfortable with these concepts. Let's exercise a little bit. Let's test your understanding. I'm going to present you with some groups of words, and I want you to decide whether each group is a phrase or a clause. You might be asked by your instructor to do this on the Word document that's attached on the Style Academy website, or you can just do it in your head based on what your instructor or your goals are here. Okay, you ready? Here's your first set of words. On the front porch steps. Is this a phrase or a clause? Feel free to pause the video and think about it for a second. This group of words is a phrase. Bunch of words, but there's no verb action in here. We have some nouns like steps, but we don't have any verb. So this is a phrase. It's an example actually of what we call a prepositional phrase. Gives us location information in this case. Okay, here's your next set of words. After the dinner party. Phrase or clause? Pause the video. What'd you come up with? Again, this is another phrase. We've got nouns, but we don't have a verb here. So it's just a bunch of words. They're connected, they mean something, but not a clause. Okay, moving on to the next one. Here's your next set. We ate peas and carrots. Phrase or clause? This set of words is a clause. It's a bunch of words, but we have here a noun, in this case the pronoun we, and we've got a verb, ate. That makes this set of words a clause. Hope you got that one right. Now, you might ask yourself, is this dependent or independent? In this case, this would be considered an independent clause. But that's kind of a bonus point for you there. Okay, here's another set, last set of words. You ready? After running to the store. Is this a phrase or clause? This one might have tripped you up a little bit, but it's actually a phrase. Now, you might have looked at the word running and thought, yeah, that's some action, that's a verbish kind of thing, and thought, yeah, this is a clause. But notice that we don't have any kind of noun attached to that verb. We don't know who or what was doing that running. And since we don't have a verb, this is just a phrase. That's it. Those are all the exercises we have for you. Hopefully, you've got a good understanding now of phrases and clauses and the way they work together in creating sentences. This understanding is fundamental to everything else we do in the Style Academy when it comes to talking about how we craft powerful sentences.